Boom, welcome back. Episode 9, Coffee Buzz Friday. The boys are fiery at each other today. We've taken some jabs at each other. We're what are we, blazing saddles? Would that be a good analogy?
I'm not sure what you mean by blazing saddles.
It was just first thing that came to my head. Sort of like the plane analogy of our last podcast, their last Coffee Buzz. It just happened.
Yeah.
It made sense in my mind. All of us are different. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
So there we go. Blazing Saddles Friday.
All right.
Happy Coffee Buzz Friday, episode 9, the Otter Let It Rip.
What is the most important thing a person can do to improve themselves?
Ready, go. Dave, start it off.
The most important thing that somebody can do to improve themselves. Ooh, interesting. So I think probably number one would be to take ownership, take responsibility, understand that it's your life and things that your life matters and the choices that you make matter, and then therefore taking ownership over what you do, not being not blaming your life on everybody else, right. Sort of standing tall and saying, hey, where I'm at is because of things that I've done and things that I've thought and my behaviors. So I think taking ownership is first step probably.
I love taking ownership, and my brain went to physically, emotionally, mentally.
Yeah,
right. Like those are common 3 big ones that you got to nail.
Yeah,
and then it was, taking responsibility of all 3 is obviously highly important. But then, would you categorize as one more important than the other?
What out of which 3?
Mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Mentally, emotionally, and physically. I think it would be hard to categorize them, right? Yeah. But if you're wanting to change, I think the first step would be mentally.
Right.
Right? But they all interact, right? Like if I, because sometimes I can improve my thoughts as much as I want, but that doesn't cause me to take action. But then also at times by doing something I'm afraid of, right, dramatically changes my mental state and my emotional state.
Well, and that's why, and now I'm asking you,
yeah,
right? Because I sometimes tackle this and think, okay, well, more and often you think people will say, well, you can't go anywhere until your mind's ready, right? Like you have to establish a mindset first and then everything else will follow. But at the same time, if you're in a bad mindset but you just find ways to move, then physically it triggers your mind. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they work off each other.
Yep.
So I don't know. And I know Nolan's asking more of a specific, like, what is the most important piece?
Yeah.
But if you look at that as like a 3-pillar, like a 3-prong system, and if one of those legs goes,
yeah, then
it's over.
Yep.
You know, like you can't stand. So I would say it's that. It's taking ownership would be my answer. I would agree with you on the sense of taking responsibility and ownership, period, of those 3.
Yeah.
With if you have to specifically answer this question, ownership is the answer of your life. Take ownership of your life. Answered. Simple.
Answered. Yep.
Now the complexity inside of that
here are the 3 components that you need to take care of.
Yes.
That you need to take ownership of and analyze, become self-aware of. What are my behaviors?
Right.
What are my emotions? What are my current thoughts?
Right.
And then slowly start to improve those.
Right. Because you could be in a bad mood. And you go work out and you just feel great afterwards.
Right.
But you went into that with a bad mood.
Yeah.
So you can't count on just your mind to be the prize here.
100%.
You know, you just got to know. You got to have awareness to know, no, I just need to physically move. And then emotionally, you can't count on just your emotions to be the driving force to want to physically do something or to want to work on your mind. You can't have one, bigger than the other.
Right, 100%. And so to self-improve, right, I guess you got to determine like what do you want to self-improve, because self-improving is doing, right? You need to behave, you need to act in the world to improve something, but at the same time there's also like being that helps you do, right? It helps the quality of your doing. And so it's like, well, if I'm just starting something, like if I'm just starting to work out, well, my mind's never going to be right until after I do it, right? So there are some things that you have to act first, and then there are some things that you have to get your mind right first.
I love it. And then you got to know, and experience will help you with that, which is wisdom,
right?
The more wisdom you have, then you can kind of know yourself. You spend that time. We just talked to Dana Cavalia today.
Yeah.
We talked about spending time in silence.
Yeah.
So taking ownership of that.
So I think the most important thing, if we have to submit an answer here, is I would go towards it's a mindset. It's a mindset that you can grow. It's a growth mindset.
is the number one key.
Is number one key.
I
Right?
love that.
Because that's rooted in improvement. If I'm wanting to improve, well then first I have to believe that I can improve. Right? Because if I have a fixed mindset and I don't believe my abilities can improve, well then I'm not going to be motivated. I'm not going to take action. Doesn't matter. My mind's just not going to be right. And therefore take that action. So you got to have a growth mindset in your abilities to improve.
I love it. Growth is the key. Carol
Dweck.
There you go. Read the book Growth Mindset, and you'll have the answer to the first question of Coffee Buzz Friday, episode 9. There you go. In 5 minutes.
Do you think human morality is learned or innate?
Do you think human morality is learned?
Or is it innate in you?
I started the clock already, so we're a little there. That's a great question.
I sure hope it's learned for your sake.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Go deeper into that. You going through some things?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I mean, I'm just curious about how you make decisions. That's all.
What about you? Are you curious about how you make decisions?
Oh, all the time, for sure.
I'm curious about how I make decisions.
And when I make decisions, oftentimes they're not the decisions that you make. So I'm just trying to get in that head of yours.
Do you ever? I'd avoid that at all costs.
I know, yeah.
Do you ever make decisions and you have to keep going with it even though you didn't agree with the decision you made?
Do you have an example?
I was hoping that you would give me an example if I asked a question.
Yeah. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to understand the question better, and so an example would be better.
Like you make a decision I'm going to move. I'm going to move and make the decision to change careers, and then you don't like the decision, but you keep doing it.
Oh, okay. So kind of like if you invite somebody to go do something,
right? Like how your brain is your gut's your second brain.
Yeah.
Right. So then you have gut feelings.
Yep.
Right. But then let's say you make a decision on a gut feeling, it ends up being miserably wrong.
Oh, sure.
What do you take from that?
Yeah, I think that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it does happen.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, then how do you trust your gut again?
How do you trust your gut again?
Yeah, because that would be morality, right? Like your morals.
Yeah. If that's innate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or is it learned?
So I would say over time, your gut is innate.
Yep.
And if you listen to your gut and it doesn't end up working out, then it would be learned. So you still have to listen to your innate morals.
Yep.
But then over time, you can learn and have a better awareness and wisdom to what is a better or worse choice.
Right. But are there times that your gut points you in the wrong direction?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I do. Mm-hmm. And then that could just be common mistakes in the past. You could just be living in such false reality or fantasy, and your gut is used to that. Your gut's so used to fantasy, so you're just continuously making choices in fantasy.
Yeah.
And until you can overcome that and learn things or create a new gut, if you will, in this instance, then you're not going to have positive choices.
Right. So, so your gut, like you want to be able to trust your gut, right? But at times, like you also need a trained gut, though. Like in baseball, right? Like if I'm not trained, if I haven't had so many reps as a hitter, it's going to be hard to trust my gut on like when to swing, when to hold back, when to make those reads, right?
Right.
So, but as I gain more experience, the more I can trust my gut because that's the information that's got in there.
100%.
Yeah.
So that would be learned.
So that'd be learned, yeah, for sure.
So what are you saying? Are you answering it as it is learned, or it is innate?
That's tough, right? Because we could say that we learn it, but then we could also say, well, how do we learn it? We observe it, right? We observe other people doing it, but then you could also argue, well, it's innate in them, and then we're just observing it. Right. So when do we become aware of it? Is it when we act it out without knowing and then observe it and then we think it's learned, or is it innate and then we're acting it?
Right.
And then we learn later on.
So as the Aristotle would pose that we're creatures of habit, right? So I would say that we are innate in our morality, but in terms of advancement for yourself personally, going back to the first question of taking ownership and responsibility, it should continuously be your objective to learn that and where you can decrease where you've had some slumps?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of it is learned, and it has to be learned. Like, for example, like if your 4-year-old isn't socialized correctly at around like 4 or 5 years old, then they're going to have a tough time later on in life.
Yeah.
You know, like they need to like interact with other kids, learn how to play, learn what fairness is, learn how to communicate. Like they need to be immersed in that. Otherwise, they have some trouble later on.
You have like 15 seconds left, but how terrifying is that as a parent? Because you have a 4-year-old.
Yeah, it's terrifying. 100%.
Is that a high focus?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Expose them to things.
Yeah, that's gnarly to think about.
Yeah.
There we go. Question 2.
What's the most
Or 3, sorry. Question 3.
What's the most crucial thing for any relationship, healthy relationship?
What's the most crucial thing for essentially any relationship? Spouses, friendships, teams?
Integrity. Sticking to your word.
Sticking to your word? Well, I did. So that's good. That's very good.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
That's going
to be a tough phone call for you after this.
There we go. I could, should I tell the whole story so that Dave now has to weather in his...
If you can get under 5 minutes, you can try.
I think honesty, communication.
Nice. So I check off all those boxes so far.
Wow. Yeah. You're just a shining example.
Well, you can use the example to try to pose it against me if you'd like.
No. I'm agreeing with you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's odd.
Yeah. What's the question?
Yeah, there we go.
What's the most crucial thing for any healthy relationship?
I would say that's tough because it depends on the relationship, right? Because you could have a business relationship, you could have a friendship relationship, and you could also have an intimate relationship.
So is there an underlining one that's all-encompassing?
I think maybe I'm going to say this, and then I'll punt it to you, see what you think. But it's a commitment to that relationship. Like it's a decision that we want this relationship to work. I think that's
100%. I think that I'm very passionate about relationships, as I would think that you guys would understand that.
Yeah.
And I look at relationships of what you just said. Like if you're on my team, you're on my team. Like we're all in. Whatever it is, whatever it's strugglesome, whatever like we made the commitment. We're a bond. We're a pact. Like what I have is yours. It's the law of the jungle. I mean, I still believe in the law of the jungle, the strength of the pack, right?
So this kind of reminds me of that question that we answered. Is everything you do selfish?
And I had this conversation with Tom Buski last night, who's the radio face, that's what it is, right? The radio face of MindStrong. So you guys aren't allowed to see him, but he's also on our team. But we had a conversation about how everything is your own self-fulfillment. And I do believe that, because even at the sense where he says, well, it's self-fulfilling for me to put you in a good position so that you can go out and have success. And so I will move things around for you to have that. But it's ultimately for me to see you have happiness, which is selfishly his desires.
100%.
And so to answer that of what is the main key for relationships to work, I think it's just understanding that this is your teammate. And so inside of that, again, simple, we're on the same team. Inside of that simplicity is all the complexity. That's where you can dive down the rabbit hole of trust, communication, integrity, commitment, discipline, and every single one of those can be debated as number one is right. But they're all the same in my mind. They're all flatlined as equivalent laws of a team. And then inside of that, you have to put yourself in the same nest of people that are just willing to just battle through that. Too often you get fleeting relationships where people don't understand that things are going to suck. Like that's part of it. Like there's going to be a time where I do not like you. You know, there's going to be a time where I do not like you. There's going to be a time where I don't want to talk to you. And you don't have to talk to me. And that's fine. But like the principles of our team are defined as like, I'm willing to struggle through this. I'm willing to not quit. You know, you don't lose that quitting. You don't lose that needle in you. You know, you want to keep going.
So what's the most important thing that keeps those people together? Right, because if
that's where I use team,
right,
is like the glue.
So like because any type of relationship is going to hit some barriers, right?
Yeah.
It's going to hit some adversity. I'm not going to want to talk to you. You're not going to want to talk to me. We're going to get frustrated. Right. I'm not going to be getting what I thought I'd be getting out of this relationship, and then at times you are going to feel shortchanged. And so then I'm going to ask, like, what's the glue that keeps us going despite all those hardships, because a lot of people will just say, see you later.
I think it's an understanding that you are looking for self-fulfillment and you're going to be selfish. I think it's an understanding that your chemistry needs that.
Yeah.
And then knowing what the selfish means. So defining your own selfish, because at some points in a relationship, it needs to be 80-20 in support of you. And then other times it needs to be 80-20 in support of the other person.
Yeah.
Or the team. Like sometimes you only add 20% of the value to the team, and you have to realize that that's 100% of the team.
Right.
Right.
And then understand that even what you need now might not be what you need later.
Correct.
Right. And so, yeah, we are selfish beings, but we also find out that the best way to preserve the self is to build great relationships, because they can hunt and gather for you later on if you give them some mastodon meat today.
Yeah. And then you're just supporting again, we use the word team. You're
yeah.
supporting the glue. Right. So just add value as best you can.
So adding value is the key to solid relationships.
Yeah, which adding value would be the result of nailing all those principles. Because I think it's too hard to say communication is set in stone. That's numero uno. If you don't have great communication, then you're wrong. Well, then what if I'll just continuously communicate to you that I lie to you all the time. But I'm communicating it to you. So, you know what I mean? This is how I communicate. But I don't think you can balance beam them as one's more important than the other.
Right, but that was the question.
And that's why I'm saying so then value. Well, I think it's a stupid question. We talked about it on the podcast a little while back.
So adding value is yours.
Adding value.
Okay, yeah. And then the commitment is mine.
Yours.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
Yeah. How long was that?
A little over 5, because I'm going to probably cut the first minute of it. Go ahead.
So this is more of an individual question, but individually, what do each of you do that's in the 1% of the world?
What do each of us do that's in the 1% of the world? Good. So we'll start this disclaimer by saying we're very humble. Very humble people.
Yeah.
What is this is a tough one to go first. I feel
This
I
is
know
tough.
that,
Well,
I feel like I know my answer.
Yeah, well, I can start to narrow it down.
Yeah, sure.
I think so. I mean, just by living in the United States, like how abundant we are here, greatest country in the world. So we met when I was in grad school, and when I was a grad student, I think I made like $8,000 a year. Right, my salary was $8,000 a year as a grad assistant. But I got tuition and stuff like that.
Right.
But anyways, with that salary, $8,000 a year, I looked it up, and at that point in time, back in 2012, I was in the top 10% of income in the world.
Yeah.
$8,000 a year.
You told me that too when you were in grad school.
Yeah.
And I've said that for years since you've told me that.
Yeah.
So you would say your answer is just being an American.
Yeah. So, well, that's a starting point.
Right.
Is like we probably do a lot of things that are in the top 1% of the world.
Okay. Are you asking us individually?
Yes, individually, and why?
So what do you do?
What do I do? That's a good question. Well, and that's why I tried to start with that to sort of narrow down like what the 1% is in the world. So I use that to try to formulate. Okay, well, where am I at?
Yeah.
Regarding that, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I looked at it in the sense of the coolest thing to me that I think about all the time is there's not a person on earth that has lived the moment I've lived. So no one on earth has your exact story or like your exact experience. I just used a story from our previous conversation, but I think of it as like no one has been anywhere that I've been at. So like I've lived every day on earth of my life with me there.
Yeah.
Like I always think about it in the sense of there's people who are super close to you that just aren't in the room with us right now. So like they're somewhere living.
Right.
And then I'm living and you're always with you.
Yeah.
So now within that already makes me a 1%er because if you want to tackle each person, it's physically and everything impossible to do what I've done personally.
For sure.
And then you dive into that and you go, okay, well, now that I have that, how have I learned how unique is that story? And then how valid or how much can that aid in another percentile? Because even anybody else, I can't be a part of your your experience either.
Right.
So I always think about that's my answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's funny too, because we're approaching this from like two different sides.
Right.
You immediately went to, well, I'm an individual and I'm going to crawl out from there.
Right.
And then I went to, okay, here's everybody. Here's how we chop it down.
Right.
Because like 1% to me isn't like me as an individual. Right. Like there's still a part of the 1% that I do. Right. And so to me, that's also shared with some other people. And so it's like, okay, I'm trying to find who I share that with then. Okay. You know, because it's easy to just go, yeah, well, nobody's been where I've been. That's an individual. There's no doubting that. Right. And so then it's like, okay, what are the few experiences that you have had that put you in the 1%? Probably like starting a business, playing professional baseball.
Yeah. Simple. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. What else do you think? Like those unique, like when you put them together, only like a few of you have experienced.
Well, the thing about starting a business that's very crazy to think about is that it starts out with somebody thought of that on their own. Mm-hmm. Like it originally was that specific thing, right? Like Under Armour was specifically that guy's thing. And then now millions of people wear Under Armour. Yeah. But like that was just one person's mind. Yeah. You know, like at one point, one person made up baseball, and then like multiple people added many more things to it. You know, so like there's like you don't even know. Like think about how many things in the world because of that individuality that one person has done that has like brought, to your point, everybody together. Right. So like in terms of starting a business or doing those things, like that's your specific idea. That was purely my brain power. And then you put it out there, and then everybody else comes in, they mold it, help clay it, and then you're just part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a tough question.
I was thinking like more like skill, like throwing a baseball or public speaking, something like that you think that you're in the top 1% of the world in.
Yeah, and I was thinking like, and I was trying to narrow down to like the categories, right? Like so you're a business owner, you threw a baseball over 90 just the other day, right? And then you public speak, like you run a podcast. So like those combinations of skills are what puts you like in the 1% of your own category.
Yeah, oh man, that's a good part too. I would say, with that being said, then it just becomes your 1% is that I'm the only one who can do that in the world, can do that combo of what I do. Mm-hmm. So like of my conversation, of my training, of my people, of my coaching, like you can't do what I do. Yeah. And there's also, that's not an arrogant statement. There's millions and billions of phenomenal, millions of awesome people that I cannot do exactly what they do.
100%.
So then like what do I do that allows people to have, you know, a more efficient, happy life?
Yeah. I think, is it Scott Adams, the creator of Dilbert? He talks about this, and he's like, what separates you is you don't have to be like the best in the world at like 3 different things. Yeah. If you're like kind of above average at a unique combination, that'll set you up higher. You know, like for him, he mentions that he's like a comedy writer, he's a trained hypnotist, and he draws, and he draws cartoons. He's not the best cartoonist ever. He's not the best hypnotist. He's not the best comedian. But once he puts all 3 of them together, there's no competition.
Yeah, because there's no one else like that.
Yeah,
that's really cool. I want to look more into that.
Yeah.
Next question.
That's 4. Good job.
Oh, it's 4.
Oh, it's 4.
Right.
Man.
Oh, that was I was into that story.
Yeah.
Everybody have a great weekend.
It. Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.